You're listening to the All Day Ruckoff Podcast, episode number 85. Welcome to the All Day Ruckoff Podcast, episode number 85. This is your host, Brian, and I wanted to thank you so much for tuning in. The All Day Ruckoff Podcast focuses on the GRT and rucking community and includes interviews, motivation, and advice to keep you informed and get you ready for your next event. In this episode, we have an interview with Tabitha Lipkin, who is a Fox 5 sports news anchor in San Diego. She recently completed a GORUCK Light event and then completed a GORUCK Tough event, both of which were aired on Fox 5 News. I recently came across her because her video on Fox 5 News popped up in a search I was doing on GORUCK. So I reached out and I'm very excited that she's on the show today. Before we get into the interview, as always, I would love to give some thanks to those who have left reviews on either iTunes or on our Facebook page. Today's review is from iTunes. So helpful, great way to engage the GORUCK community. 5 stars. Love the content and the passion. Brian comes across as so much like one of us, just hanging out and having a conversation. These podcasts have been so helpful in helping me learn more about the rucking community. Keep it up, Brian. Thank you so much for taking the time to write that. You're absolutely right. These interviews are just me having a conversation with fellow GRT and other people in the community. They're all phone calls and they're a ton of fun. It's a great way to talk to GRT who I might never meet in person, and I'm having a blast with it. So thank you so much, and I'm glad you're enjoying the content. Quick announcements before we get into the interview. charitychallenges.org, 1,000 mile challenge, 100% of the net proceeds to Green Beret Foundation and Team RWB. That event is up on charitychallenges.org. And then as of when this is released, the Winter Challenge 2019 should be up as well. That's 5,000 push-ups and 5,000 sit-ups between February and March. That's also available at charitychallenges.org. And that one too is 100% of the net proceeds to charity. Besides that, I'm just really excited about this interview. So let's get into it. Today, I'm talking with Tabitha Lipkin, who recently completed a GORUCK Tough event. It was her second event, the first being a GORUCK Light event. And I found out about this event because it came through on the Fox 5 San Diego website. She had a camera out there, did some recording. It was really, really cool. And so I'm just really excited to talk to you about this today. So how are you doing today, Tabitha?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for having me. I'm excited to talk about the crazy experience that it was.
Well, thank you so much again for taking the time. I really appreciate it.
Totally.
So GORUCK, what made you decide to sign up for an event? And then on top of that, what made you decide to get Fox 5 San Diego involved?
Well, it's kind of a long story, but I'd say like 2 years ago, I briefly dated a guy who had a GORUCK backpack. And I remember looking at the backpack and being like, oh, that bag is really cool. And he explained what it was. And at the time, I didn't quite understand. And I was like, oh, okay, cool. But he basically was like, you're going to have to like do an event if you want one of these bags. And I was like, that's fine. Like I could do that. Fast forward, let's say a year after that, and a friend I went to high school with actually started working on their marketing team. And she introduced me to the brand, really told me what the brand was about, and anything that supports and or brings together our military community, I am all for. So she told me about the light event happening in San Diego, and crazy enough, it was literally the next day from a trip that I took to Tahiti. So I went to Tahiti. I got back, let's say, at noon the day before, and I was doing the light event the next day at noon. So that's kind of how originally I heard about it. And because I thought it was such a unique event and experience, I wanted to share it through Fox 5. I wanted people who may not have heard about it to know what it is, and maybe it's something they'd want to get involved with as well. So we have obviously a very large military community here in San Diego. So it all came together.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So that trip you took, I mean, you're gone and then you come back. Did you have all your stuff ready for that event, or did you kind of have to scramble last minute?
I'm someone who doesn't torture myself quite. So I came back, I looked at all the things I needed, and I was like, okay, good. Looks like I have most of the things I need. So let's go do this. And that's how it came to be. Now, I had a cameraman with me for my first event. For the event that you saw, I did not. I had someone who met me at 9 o'clock at night, which is when it started, to shoot like an intro. Just as he was getting off work, basically. They're like, hey, go shoot Tabitha's thing real quick, and she's going to film the rest. So the next event, I had to film all of it while competing in the event.
Yeah, I saw that. It was the intro. I mean, it was, the what you would expect from watching TV. You've got the nice camera, a perfect view, and then you did the intro, and then after that, it looked like a lot of GoPro shots. I think you brought a GoPro along with you.
Yeah, I brought my GoPro and my cell phone. And I think what's really important about this too is no one objected to me filming. Everyone was really supportive who was also taking part in the event. And everyone was really welcoming to me, even though I was kind of an outsider, I guess you would say. Most people there had done events before and done tough events before, and I was kind of one of a couple who really hadn't. And everyone was just really great and supportive and let me film them, or let me do stuff with them and share their snacks with me. Like, it was amazing.
Well, you're part of the community. I mean, you've done a light before, so that wasn't your first rodeo. And I think one of the things I found doing so many events is that everyone's just so nice. It's just a place that you can find just really good people.
Yeah, that's true. Everyone was really nice, especially because, a lot of the people taking part in the events are current military, ex-military. There were a couple of police officers. There was a couple of border patrol. But I think once I kind of explained to everyone what I was doing, which was, kind of giving the public a glimpse into something they may not be familiar with, everyone was on board. It's
so true. And I forget that sometimes because I'm so, I'm embedded in all this. But a lot of these events start at 9 p.m. at night on a Friday. And at 9 p.m. at night, most people are at home. They've either put the kids down or they're putting them down. They're maybe, turning on the TV or watching Netflix. And then these tough events, the index at 8 or 9 in the morning. And most people on Saturday morning at 8 or 9 are turning on cartoons for the kids, making breakfast and that stuff. And so most people who aren't familiar with these events probably never see them or hear about them ever happening.
Exactly. And that's why this was kind of a perfect combination to be like, hey, check this out. And I got a lot of interest in the story, not only internally, but obviously people who ended up seeing it on Facebook or through the website. And I actually entered it into an Emmy category because I really enjoyed it, and I thought that maybe it was somewhat worthy of an Emmy, maybe. Fingers crossed.
I'll cross my fingers too.
Thank you.
So what did people at work think when did you pitch this idea to them, or did they hear that you were going to do it and they said, hey, Tabitha, maybe you can take this camera with you? How did that whole thing, come about?
Well, I kind of have a unique job. I'm the sports anchor and reporter at Fox 5, but I also do a lot of outside stories that aren't always necessarily, they fit perfectly into that sports category. For instance, I went and I dove the Legoland tanks as the only non-employee to ever dive the tanks and show, people what the tanks were like and, what what they have to do to maintain them in order to keep rides going and how they rehabilitate animals and stuff like that. So this story kind of fell into that, where it was, yes, a sports story because rucking is a sport, but also people who, may not be interested in your normal sports, let's say football or baseball or basketball, mainstream sports, would be interested in something like this, that all you really need is, a pair of shoes and a backpack, and you don't even necessarily have to have a GORUCK bag. If you have a weight and a backpack, you can go rucking yourself. So I just did it, and then it kind of got picked up. Usually when I do stories, I will just organize it myself. Once they're shot, edited, and ready to air, I will say, hey, I think this would also be of an interest for our morning show and our afternoon show, and it usually gets picked up from there.
That's phenomenal. And that is so cool that you got to dive the Lego tanks.
Yeah, that was one of the crazy stories I've done that's kind of outside that realm of typical sports.
So it seems that just based off your website, you're very interested in diving and scuba diving.
Yes, I'm a dive master. I've been diving since 2010, which is almost 10 years now. And I try to do a lot of fun extracurriculars. I'm also really interested in aviation. However, I don't have my license by any means, but I do a lot of stuff when I can with like MCAS Miramar when they bring the air show here, and I may be doing something coming up in March, maybe. Fingers crossed. I don't want to jinx it, but the plan this year is to go up with the Blue Angels and do a story with them as well.
That would be a story.
Yeah, it's kind of common. Everyone gets to go, like not everyone, but when you've been in the industry long enough, the Blue Angels take one media writer with them pretty much in every city. It's a very competitive thing to get chosen, but I feel like it's my turn. I've been applying for a couple of years now, and I'd like to do a unique story. I don't want to do the same, like, oh, I'm going to go up with the Blue Angels. Like, I want to dive into the history of the Blue Angels and what it's really about before just going up with them, because they have such a unique job touring the U.S. and representing the men and women who are serving our Navy, who aren't able to go on tour, right? Or tour like air shows and stuff like that. So pretty cool stuff.
It's very cool. And I think that you would be honestly great to do that, because it's a very non-traditional story, and you also bring your own approach to it, which is definitely a unique one. I'm sure that if you look at the stories that have come out on the Blue Angels and kind of stack them next to each other, a lot of them are pretty similar with the traditional interview questions, but it seems like you really kind of go outside the box with some of that.
Yeah, that's the aim, and that's why a story like GORUCKing is so fun.
Absolutely. So you did your first event, and that was a light. That was down in San Diego as well?
That was on Coronado.
And who was the cadre for that event?
Ragnar. He's a cool dude. He's the one who really encouraged me to do a tough as well. He was like, if you can do this, you could do a tough easy.
So that was some added motivation there.
Oh, definitely.
So I guess the event must have not have been, too bad, because you came back for a second one for that tough.
I thought it was pretty intense. The tough for me was difficult. I can tell you, I remember getting at the very end, and there were moments when I didn't think I could carry any weight. Like, I felt like I couldn't even take another step. My feet were so numb, and I had just, hiked. I don't know the exact mileage. It was somewhere between like 16 and 20. They told us at the very end, but it hiked up and down that far over 12 hours. And it was difficult, but I will tell you, people who took part in the event with me told me that they felt like it was a pretty easy, tough event. And I was like, oh my goodness.
That is too funny.
Yeah.
And I guess that's the thing. And that was one of the things that was really fun watching the video you shot, is that you can see the progression throughout the night on how everyone's kind of doing. And then it gets a little bit rougher and rougher looking. And then at the very end, everyone's excited because you've indexed, and I see the progression at events, but there's so little filming at GORUCK events, so you never really get to sit down at a computer and watch it.
Yeah. So that is also kind of a cool, unique thing is I've gotten to film 2 events. I guess the next one would have to be a heavy.
I was going to ask about that. So you've done the light, you've done the tough now. Are there, any plans for the next event? Are the people at the station coming to you and saying, Tabitha, those first 2 stories, they're really good. We hear GORUCK has a bigger event. You want to do it?
I do. I will admit, when I finished my tough and I was in my car and I was sitting there for a second, I was like, I'm never going to do this again. But, as time passes, you're like, you know what? I kind of want to do another one. So I would be game to do a heavy. I would be game to take 24 hours and just wreck it.
It's funny how that works, isn't it?
Yeah, it totally is.
When I did my first event, I finished it. I had a friend who was supposed to do it with me, and he bailed at the last minute. So I was having a drink with him a couple days later, and he said, I know I bailed on that event, but I'll do the next one with you. And I said, there's not going to be a next event. That was too much. And then time goes on, you kind of forget about, the parts that sucked and, were pretty rough, and you just sign up for another one because all you remember is the good times.
And there, a lot of the guys who were there with us and guys and girls who were with me on the tough, they said the same thing. We're towards the end and we're all kind of tired. And they're like, oh yeah, this is my, 12th event. This is my 20th event. I'm like, oh my gosh, you guys are amazing.
Well, that was your second event. And that's nothing to scoff at either. So for the tough event, who was the cadre for it?
Kevin. He is ex-Special Forces, and now he teaches, I think it's like training, and he is a total rock star. And
so you had a pretty unique objective for this tough event that you mentioned at the beginning of the video. I thought it was really cool. Do you want to tell the listeners what the goal for your tough was?
Yeah, it was to climb all 5 peaks in our 12-hour period, which was about 20 miles. And doing it, of course, with my 20-pound sack, including all my snacks. So maybe, let's say 25 pounds if you include all my Sour Patch Kids and Red Bulls and beef jerky. And then we had team weights that varied in range from 40 pounds to 80 pounds.
So when I watched the video, I was trying to figure out if you had done an event before, because I saw an event patch on your backpack, and then you pulled out, you're like, these are the snacks I brought, and you pull out Sour Patch Kids, and I was like, oh, she's definitely done an event before. She knows what's important to bring. It's the snacks, the things that make you smile.
Yeah, because I didn't bring snacks the first time. I was like, all I brought was water. I was like, okay, it's 5 or 7 hours and I just need some water. But I got hungry in the middle of my event and I needed stuff.
I know that's one of the things that, it's usually last on my list, or it used to be, that I would think about was the food. I'd be like, okay, I got, the important stuff like the weight and the backpack, of course, because if you show up without that, then it's very embarrassing.
Yeah.
But it's those little things like the, Swedish Fish or Sour Patch Kids that you could eat halfway through that really make you smile, that end up being a really nice pick-me-up.
Yeah, which I imagine now, although I am not in the military and I haven't served, I come from a long line of those who did. My great uncle, who was like a father to me, he was a sergeant major in the Army. I have 2 cousins who are Marines. Let's see, my grandfather served in the Air Force. So I've got that, but I imagine when you're actually training, you don't get Sour Patch breaks. You don't get to do any of that fun stuff.
That's probably true.
Yeah.
So what do your friends and family think of you doing these events? Did they see you on TV? Is that how they found out about it? Or did you tell them about it in advance?
I told them about it in advance. My grandmother is kind of used to me doing weird stuff like this. I kind of tell her, I don't always tell her up front. I've learned to tell her afterwards because she gets a little anxious. Like I've I've been cage diving with like great whites and stuff like that. And she's always just like, no, we'll talk about it later. So with this, I did mention what I was going to do. And she's like, are you going to be okay? Are you safe? I'm like, yes, I couldn't be safer. I'm surrounded by a bunch of, military, ex-military police officers. I think I'm going to be in good hands if anything happens.
Yeah, it's honestly probably one of the safest groups to be with.
Exactly. Like there is something that happened. I don't know if they wanted me to mention this, but before the event even started, someone seemed to have a heart attack before we even lined up. So nothing, they had just gotten there basically. And someone who was going to participate with his wife or daughter, I'm not quite sure of the details, but he had to sit down and we had to call an ambulance to pick him up, and he did not participate. Neither did his wife or daughter who was with him.
That's terrifying.
Yeah, but he was in good hands. I mean, he had paramedics around. He had everyone who he could have needed to help to get him, stable and to have the ambulance come and take him to the hospital.
Yeah. I mean, there's usually so many people to help. I'm used to is there anyone here who can help? And in, the cases at these events, it's like, all right, we have a ton of people here who can help. Like, we only need 2 or 3.
Yeah, exactly.
That's kind of crazy that happened. You don't hear about that happening too much at the start of events. Was he okay afterwards? Do you know any follow-up?
Oh, yeah. We got a follow-up. He was fine. They were visiting to do the event from Canada, I believe, as well. So I think the only thing was just kind of sadness that they weren't able to participate fully when making such a long trip. And then all I could think about is, if they're from Canada and they're having to go to the hospital, they're in for a shock when they get their bill. Yeah, it's just kind of there's the ribbon on the package there. You don't get to do the event. You have to go home, but not after incurring a nice little bill on the way. Yeah. So, I mean, obviously that was a shock at the beginning of the event. Throughout the event, was there anything that happened that you kind of remember as being, notable, like something that was, really rough or something that really brought the team together? No, not in a negative sense. Just I think everyone was pretty good about motivating each other and working together from the get-go. There was a point in time, and this isn't mentioned in the video, but the only way to get from the first 2 peaks to the next 3, or you go up and down, and then you get back to your car and you have to drive to the next parking lot, which is less than a mile away. But there's a highway that splits the 5 peaks. So you can, I guess, technically cross it, but you would have to cross a major roadway. And that's just, it's not ideal, at 3 a.m. and you can't really see. And so they were like, what we're going to do is do this, get in our cars, go, and then we'll start again. And when we did that, a couple of people dropped out. A couple of people didn't go to the next 3.
Yeah, I mean, when you're given an out like that, we're actually getting back in the car, you might get a little warm. It's tough. I hear about that a lot for people who do the HTLs or the TLs, where they do the heavy event and then the tough and then the light, or they do the tough and then the light right after it. A lot of people call it the HZL, where instead of doing the T, they take a nap because it's just getting warm again, getting clean again. It's like, I'm so comfortable. I really don't want to go back out there.
Yeah, exactly.
So did you find it hard at all bringing the camera around with you and shooting the video? Because I usually find myself getting a little distracted with the event. It seemed like you did a great job with it.
I'm pretty used to filming things that I do. Having worked in broadcast since before I graduated college, which at this point has been 7 years, I don't get distracted. I never forget to film. So it was a little bit of an extra hassle at times, I will admit. There were moments where I was tired and I just wanted to kind of complete the objective. But I knew there were going to be things needed to be ready to go. So I kept my GoPro pretty much on my wrist the whole time. And then when it was situations in which I didn't think the GoPro was going to do very well, I filmed on my phone.
Perfect. And did you have like an attachment or something to keep the GoPro on your wrist?
Yeah, I had a little wristy attachment that I used, which after, a couple of hours actually starts to chafe your hands, which I know is such a silly thing for me to say. Like, oh, my hand was hurting, but it was a little annoying.
Yeah, and it's just one more thing on top of everything else that's going on.
Exactly.
I've brought a GoPro to a couple events in the past, and it's always fun to get some video because, you see some amazing sights that you probably, won't be back to at that time of day, hopefully.
Yeah, and I got some cool pictures. I threw them on my Instagram too of just getting to the top of one of the peaks. I believe it was Fortuna South at sunrise, and it was kind of a foggy day. So the fog had settled in the valleys below. The sun was coming up above the mountains, and it was just a really beautiful moment, still knowing that there was a couple of hours left. Like, it was only 7 a.m. when that happened. So I had like 2 more hours to go.
Yeah, that was a great shot. That's the one with the sun in front of you. You're kind of rucking up towards the mountain, and it's rising, right?
Yeah, and I filmed most of it, but there was 2 or 3 times when I asked people who were not competing, but taking part in the event as well, to film me, because I wanted to get a shot or two of, showing, that's part of it, showing me doing it. And they were super helpful, and no one said no. Everyone was amped to help me out.
Yeah. I imagine that someone shot that one because your feet are in it too. I'm really not sure how you would have done that yourself. And if you did do it yourself, I'm very impressed. And
I'm very impressive, right?
But yeah, the community is so nice. And the goal of this was to kind of, bring rucking and GORUCK and just, show it to people who have never seen it before. And so it's a lot easier to do that when you've got more of you in the shot than just, a lot of small frames of your face, I guess. Not that those are bad.
Yeah.
But, just different angles, different shots and all that.
Exactly.
So, you don't have to commit to a heavy, but are you thinking about doing a heavy for the show?
Maybe, because I've done 2 now for Fox. I don't know if they would. Maybe they would be. They'd be interested in a 24-hour event. But we'll see. We'll see what they say. Probably somewhere down the line, maybe towards next July or August. And maybe the story would be fresh again. The idea is I don't want people to just be like, oh my gosh, all right, we get it. You do GORUCK events. But giving them another perspective on it, especially because I've been told now that the light event that I did and the heavy event I did, quote, weren't that bad. So if they weren't that bad, then let's see, give me something pretty bad.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. You have to take all of that into consideration because it's for the viewers. It's like, exactly. There she is doing their GORUCK event. All right.
There she is again. We get it.
Well, is there anything else that you want to talk about? Related to the event? Is there anything else that happened that I might have missed? I think we did a really good job going through that.
Yeah, you definitely did. And I appreciate all your questions, and I appreciate you having me on. The only thing I just want to reiterate, especially if someone listens to this who was a part of, my team that day, that I really appreciate it. And I had a really good time, and I felt very welcome. And the video was really well received. I actually didn't have anyone say anything negative to me about it, which is rare. You always get 1 or 2 people, no matter what the story is. It could be a story about how water is good for you, and people will be like, I don't know about that. But it was well received, and I appreciate that, and I appreciate the community making me one of them.
I love it. That's awesome. That's
It's true though. When you work in journalism long enough, that those things happen, and you're just like, okay, we get it.
Yeah. Well, and especially when your audience is so diverse, right? I mean, All Day Ruckoff, the audience is, GRT, people in the GORUCK community. So I don't really have, too many people out who don't know about rucking, finding the website, finding the podcast, and being like, I don't know about that, but you're on TV. And so, like literally anyone flipping through the channel can find this and then voice their opinion.
Exactly. So I appreciate everything and everyone who was involved. And I even appreciate, you picking up the story and wanting to bring me on your podcast. It's really cool.
Well, thank you again. Thank you so much again. And so if people want to learn more about you, so I'm gonna have links to your social accounts, links to both videos. I'm gonna dig up the first one because I'm kicking myself now. I haven't actually seen that light video yet, but I'll have them all in the show notes.
I'll send it to you.
Oh, perfect. That would be wonderful. So if people want to learn more about you, learn more about what you do, where can they go and find more info?
Totally. I have a website. It is tabithalipkin.com, which is pretty easy. Or I'm at Tabitha Lipkin on Instagram and Twitter, or at Tabitha Lipkin Official on Facebook.
Perfect. I'll get those in the show notes. So if you're listening to this, you can pull those up. You can get a link to the videos as well. And you can just see all the awesomeness there. Thank you so much for listening to the All Day Ruckoff podcast. I really hope you enjoyed this interview with Tabitha. It was so fun to have her on. And who knows, if she ends up doing a heavy event, it would be a blast to have her back on and hear how that went for her. If you want links to anything that we talked about during the show or to any of her personal pages, you can check out the show notes, alldayruckoff.com/podcast/episode-085. Just a reminder, 1,000 Mile Challenge and the Winter Challenge 2019 registration's open at charitychallenges.org. There'll be a link in the show notes for that as well. I hope everyone has had a great week so far. And if you're listening to this on release day, I hope you have a great rest of your week and a great weekend. Thank you so much for the incredible support. And don't forget, attitude is everything. Keep yours positive and drink hard, rock harder.